Thank you. Hello. So before getting started, imagine this. A single threat actor targeting government officials and unsuspecting university students with tools that you can download for free. That's not fiction. It's exactly what SideCopy APT is doing today. It doesn't just go after your systems. It infiltrates trust. So in the next few minutes, we are going to look at how this group has evolved its tactics over the years, how it used multi-platform clusters, and what it means to every one of us, from students to national security leaders. So today we are going to cover what is SideCopy, or exactly who is SideCopy, look at its previous clusters, how it has evolved its tactics from HTA to MSI based stages for its primary mechanism, and then look at its new targets, sectors it has targeted in 2024 and recently in 2025, look at its new clusters, and finally end with the response strategies. So a little about me, I'm Sathwik, working as a senior security researcher, part of the APT team for the past 3 years, where we hunt and track for such APT groups, their infrastructure, delve into dark web, and do malware analysis. So few of the socials that you can reach out to me are on LinkedIn and Twitter. So SideCopy is an advanced persistent threat group which is attributed to a South Asian nation-state group. It is also known as a subdivision of another APT group known as Transparent Tribe. So SideCopy was first observed in 2019, where initially we saw that there were TTPs similar to that of an APT known as Sidewinder, and they are actually copying these same TTPs, for example, the HTA-based stager and DLL sideloading techniques, to use a very well-known open source agent known as Xeno RAT in 2019. And later we have seen in 2020 it has started to target the Indian defense sector with very well-known exploits for template injection using the same HTA-based stager. And in 2021, we saw it started to pivot to target power sector in both India and Afghanistan with its custom in-house payloads known as Reverse RAT, Night Fury, and it has also expanded its arsenal with various plugins. And continuing to 2022 and 23, it has started to target Linux-based systems with Golang-based Stealer and APT36 related Kavach-themed lures, and then it has also started to target specifically DRDO and Ministry of External Affairs of India with various lures related to honey trap themes, missile, and so on. And in 23, we have for the first time seen multi-platform clusters where it has started to target both Windows and Linux-based platforms simultaneously with new in-house based remote access Trojans. And now we will look at some of the previous clusters from 23 and 2024. This is the first cluster where we have seen 3 different infection chains. So on the left-hand side, you can see that it has started to exploit the then zero-day vulnerability in WinRAR, which is 38831. This is used to drop the Xeno RAT agent. But this is now how we actually saw that it started using this exploit for weaponization. Initially, we started to target its well-known TTPs, that is the HTA-based stager. So we found an archive file named as docscanner, which is containing a shortcut file with a double extension format. And this is downloading a HTA file which is present on a remote server. This HTA file drops the final RAT DRAT, which is connecting to a unique C2, and we saw that this C2 is having a connection to a same Xeno RAT, and this is how we backtracked that it is also exploiting this vulnerability. Another interesting thing that we found is that a same naming convention for this archive file that is targeting the Windows-based systems was also containing another archive which is having ELF-based payloads, and both these archive files were being hosted on the same domain. And this domain was resolving to the same IP ASN which was used in its previous campaigns. And this Linux-based stager is dropping another open source RAT known as Aris RAT, which is hosting C2 behind the pfSense firewall. So this is the first cluster, and going to the decoys. So these are the decoys which confirm that it is starting to target the defense sector continuously, where this is the NGO lure, and the second one is the another Ministry of Defense lure which it has started to target with the theme of medical delegation. Coming to the HTA-based stager, it is a typical HTA-based stager generated using an open source toolkit known as Cactus Torch. So basically, it tries to check what .NET version is present and decode all the base64 encoded strings so that it can fetch what the antivirus version is. And finally, this HTA will execute an embedded DLL file, and this is run in the memory of MS HTA process. Parallel to this one, going to the Linux stager, here we saw that this is a Golang-based ELF binary, and if you see at the sequence of these steps, it is simply creating persistence using cron tab and then downloading the final payload similar to that of the HTA stager. But interesting thing that we observed is that this specific set of sequences were observed in few other logs by researchers such as Aptix and Zscaler. So on the left hand side you can see it was used to drop Pinestore based payloads as a stager, which finally drops a Golang based Poseidon agent. And in the same year in 2023, we have observed the same set of sequences in a desktop entry file targeting the Linux-based systems. So here we found the first correlation initially that the same stages were being used by both SideCopy APT and APT36, reconfirming that they are again both related. These are some of the next clusters which are almost same to the first cluster. The only change is that targeting the Windows-based platforms, it has used different payloads. For example, Action RAT, Key RAT, which are completely new. But the right hand side, if you see, it is again targeting the Linux-based payloads using the same Iris RAT. These are some of the decoys confirming that it is targeting specifically the Department of Military Affairs, agencies such as NSRO, and again Ministry of Defense in this all three lures. Cluster 4 is a little bit different. Here no Linux-based payloads were used, but in the first quarter of 2024, we have seen triple infection chain where it was observed during the first quarter, exactly during March and end of April, where 3 different spikes were observed in our telemetry. So this was having its typical HTA-based stager, where it was having 2 dual HTA stages to drop dual allocore rats. Both are running, parallel to each other, and they are having almost same commands and pinging to the attacker machine, and they are like complementing to each other. So this allocore rat was again the same HTA-based stager is used to drop these, but the allocore rat commands that we have observed here with SideCopy are based on Delphi-based rat. And then when we have pivoted on the same C2, on this C2 we have observed .NET-based allocore rat, which was used on the infrastructure of APT36. So if you see, SideCopy is using Delphi-based allocore rat commands and APT36 is using .NET-based allocore rat, again giving us more correlations further. These are some of the decoys, and if you see, as I said, this was targeting specifically at the financial year end of 2024, and all these lures are related to the grant of allowances like transport allowance, hardship allowance, and other related allowances. This is the most interesting cluster that we have found so far, which is cluster 5, and the hunting process is very unique. So in 23, we have found a new APT group known as Rustic Web, and it was using completely different payloads, that is Rust-based payloads, and then it has started to use or exfiltrate sensitive documents using web service-based tools like Oshi Upload and Firebase. And what interesting thing we saw is that the decoy documents which were observed in this Rustic Web blog that we have published, the same decoys were later referenced by other well-known vendors, and they have published, such as Volexity and BlackBerry have published a new payload known as Discomoji. So this Discomoji was attributed to APT36. So now we can see that more correlations between these APTs are being built up. So now we started to hunt for Discomoji, which was attributed to APT36, and we found exactly 3 open directories which are all related to education portals. So these education portals are compromised initially by SideCopy APT, and if you see that amongst all these 3, the middle one, we saw that it was hosting payloads related to both SideCopy and APT36. Left hand side you can see that it is hosting payload of Discomoji, and right hand side in the hidden URLs you can see it was hosting the HTA based stager that we have seen in the previous clusters. So this is the complete infection chain that we found of cluster 5, where both SideCopy was targeting the Windows based platforms and APT36 was targeting Linux based platforms. So overall, if you see that there are multiple correlations that we found, like the same decoy is being used across both these, and the C2 which was observed in SideCopy APT was having a common name which was seen since 2013 with APT36, again confirming these correlations. A little bit of new changes that we have found with APT36, where Google Drive was used instead of a previously domain compromised, where Volexity has mentioned that, and newer RATs like Jetta RAT has been seen here. So these are the HTA stages regarding cluster 5, and if you see in this specific HTA file, we saw that it is having domains which was actually used by Sidewinder. So SideCopy is directly copying that of Sidewinder APT. It is not only changing all the decoded commands and everything, it is just changing the domain which it was using for exploitation. And that's it. It is just copying these HTA-based stages and using its payloads. So these are still having zero detections, the static detections when we have uploaded it to VirusTotal using various decoding methodologies and decryption so that it can evade the initial static detections. These are the HTA-based RATs that we have observed. So in this cluster 5, we saw that it was hosting 3 different HTA files. So each HTA file based on what the victim operating system is running. So based on Windows 7 or Windows 10 or Windows 11, it is executing that specific HTA file. And finally, it is dropping the new RAT known as Jetta RAT. And when we analyzed this Jetta RAT, we found that it is taking the same functionality of that of Async RAT. Specifically, the browser stealing functionality has been grabbed from this one. And as we saw previously that the 3 domains were completely related to education portals. And the decoys deployed using this infection chain in cluster 5 are all related to various research assignments, various research works, assignments, projects, and questionnaires. And now when we saw that this was targeting something related to education sector, but the lures are not exactly targeting the officials or the education entities. It was targeting the university students to get the information related to all what student is studying, what he is doing, what are his background, so that these can be shared further with this specific APT group for other unknown activities. These are the complete correlations that we have identified through the first 5 clusters, where you can see that APT36, SideCopy, and Rustic Web, all 3 are sharing infrastructure, specifically the IPs, common names amongst its infrastructure. Even the lure files as seen with other vendors are being shared among this group, and even based on code level in both ELF-based stages and Windows-based payloads, it has started to share completely code and infrastructure with the C2 commands have been identified. So this was observed till the end of 2024 or the last quarter of 2024. But in December 24, we have seen that it has started to pivot to a new MSI-based stager. And similarly, as we have hunted our cluster 5 using open directories, we have started to hunt for more such open directories, and we found all these open directories are actually related to maritime sector. So here we saw that it has again started to use MSI-based stages targeting maritime sector. So if you see in the infection chain on the top, it is having the same archive file, dropping the LNK file, and then finally using the MSI-based stager to drop the reverse RAT payload. And this was using a lure related to the IAF, again coming under the Ministry of Defense. Coming to the below infection chain, it has used the same stages, except here batch file was used to drop the reverse RAT, and then newer payloads such as cheeks and USB copier was used to exfiltrate again sensitive documents. And all the domains which were observed here were related to various ports, shipyards, and docks, all coming under the Ministry of Ports under India and Ministry of Defense, again confirming that it was targeting the maritime sector. So these are some of the lures which we have observed targeting these specific ports, using pay allowance related to IAF, and some of the contracts and various other details for these specific ports. And then we saw that more and more .NET payloads, like we have seen in the infection chain, it was dropping payloads such as cheeks and USB copier to download these newer payloads for exfiltrating these documents. We have observed a newer MSI-based cluster as well, where here again we saw that it was trying to create a fake domain related to e-governance portal for India. So here we saw that the phishing email is downloading the payloads from this e-governance portal, dropping the MSI-based stager. Similarly, along with this Windows-based targeting, we saw that it has gone back to targeting the Linux-based payloads. Here it has used the same ELF-based stager to drop a very well-known open source RAT known as Spark RAT. And coming to the Windows-based, it has used DLL sideloading technique, which is we saw with even HTA-based stages, to drop a new custom RAT which was in-house and which we have named as curlback RAT. So these are the decoys, where the first one is targeting the oil and gas sector, which is again a lure related to cybersecurity guidelines. The middle one is targeting specifically the Indian railway sector and entities under this, confirming that we have also seen telemetry related to this, confirming that it has started to target these new entities. And again, the last decoy is related to Ministry of Affairs, so it has still continued to target that. On this e-governance portal, we have seen multiple credential phishing subdomains on this. Almost 13 subdomains were observed here. All are trying to harvest credentials from not only these officials, but also the citizens that were using these various services. So services such as webmail, safety tank registration system, payroll, and etc. were being observed. And if you see that all these credential harvesting domains were hosting or servicing specific city municipal corporations to these as listed, but all these interestingly are exactly from the state of Maharashtra. So it was targeting exactly entities in this specific state. So this is the complete DNS history that we have observed, where first it has started to create this specific domain in 2023 of June, and slowly till the end of December 2024, it has created almost 13 subdomains. And this is the DNS history, where we can see that the complete ASN is being rotated specific to India related geolocation. So this is the second cluster where we saw that the archive is containing a shortcut or a link file. This link file is having a very huge command. So basically it is trying to confuse or evade detections by using the exponent file. So it is simply trying to use the MSI exec command line to download a remote MSI based file. So this MSI is a package which contains multiple, you can package any kind of payloads and multiple documents at the same time. So in this MSI, we saw that it is having a .NET stager. This is simply again a stager which downloads the decoy file, drops it all the DLL side loading techniques that are required to execute the final curlback rat. So this is the curlback rat, which was completely new, and it was actually a signed binary. And interestingly, we saw that it was having functionality and libraries related to curl with each and every type of communication that can be found with the curl libraries. And this was having compilation timestamp exactly at the end of December, just when the Christmas was over and people were chill at the end of the year. It has started to target these sectors. So initially what it does is it tries to check the connectivity with the C2. So it then registers the victim with the C2 and finally gathers system information like what is the basic physical system details like the RAM, the processors, the memory. It also tries to grab how many processes are running, what process is running, what are the number of displays connected, and then all these information are gathered, and then it tries to persist to the system by schedule tasks, setting up run registry keys using the name as OneDrive, and then it registers the victim's machine by creating or generating a UUID for that victim and registers it with the victim and the attacker machine. So the initial commands, the 4 commands that we observed are in reversed format. These are again used to register the victim, and they fetch the C2 commands, make the connection alive so that the attacker and victim are having the specific connections, and then finally upload all the results to this specific attacker. So these are the C2 commands that we have extracted from the specific C2 and the malware payload, where it is typical with the various remote access trojans like downloading various payloads, setting up persistence, what is that specific level of persistence like system level privileges, or is it having a normal user level privileges. Finally upload and zip all this archive documents, sensitive documents present in these specific systems, and then exfiltrate it to the machine. So similar to that, we have seen the same Linux-based stager as we have seen in the infection chain to drop the Linux-based Spark RAT. So this Spark RAT was almost seen or firstly seen in 2022 on GitHub, which is having more than 500 folks, and a lot of custom variants were being used by many APTs related to China like Dragon Spark and Tag 400. So this custom variant, which is named as Thunder, is being used by SideCopy APT. But it is not done here. It again went back to HTA for the new cluster we found in January of 2025. So here it went back to targeting the defense sector, but here no DLL sideloading was seen in this specific cluster, where in previous clusters we saw DLL sideloading for different remote access trojans. And this was targeting only Windows-based systems. We also observed Linux-based targeting, but we couldn't yet retrieve the payloads. But here we saw that it was trying to use newer TTPs in 2025, where PowerShell commands are used to decrypt the AES encrypted payloads, and then extraction is done from the resource section. So this is the spear phishing emails that we have identified, which were sent to the victims exactly on 13th and 15th of Jan. And this was specifically targeting NDC, which is the National Defense College, as you can see from the lures. And then we found that the HTA is still completely FUD or fully undetected. Slowly we saw that it is gaining to increase the number of static detections on VT, and it is having a good rate of detection for behavior, but statically it is having very less detections. So simply the HTA is trying to embed the .NET based payload. This .NET stager is decoded, and in this .NET stager we found that the resource section is completely encrypted. So the resource section is containing a one big payload. So this is divided into a PDF file and exe file. So the PDF is a benign file which is completely ignored, and then the final payload is actually downloaded. So this is how the final payload is executed, where PowerShell is being used with the typical ignoring of policies and profiles, and the two specific parameters are sent to the command line, where it used to download and then decrypt the final AES encrypted based payload embedded in this specific stager, and it is using its typical base64 decoding, and then finally the key is used to decrypt the final payload. And then when we saw that what is the final payload, this is again an open source RAT as usual, typical with the SideCopy APT, but this is again a custom variant of Xeno RAT. So this Xeno RAT is an open source RAT which was first seen at the end of 2023, which features various functionalities such as HVNC, different SOC5 proxies to be used for communication, bypassing of UAC, to elevate privileges, and then finally maintaining persistence. So custom variants of this Xeno RAT were again observed by Cisco Talos last year, which was named as Moonpeak, and it was used by North Korean groups. And if you see the diagram, almost all the functionality is being taken from this Xeno RAT present on GitHub, and it has started to add basic customization for string-based manipulation to evade detections. So these are all the threat hunting lures that we have initially used, whereas for hunting the LNK files, we have used static machine IDs that are registered with this LNK files. So these are the hunting files that we have initially found, and for behavior-based threat hunting, we have used for HTA how MSHTA is used to trigger this specific execution. Then later we saw how PowerShell was used, and based on this, we have threat hunted on various platforms like VirusTotal. And for hunting the infrastructure, we have used tools such as Validin, Census. Based on specifically hunting the open directories, we have seen that it was hosted on Lightspeed servers, and all the C2s were located in Germany, with specific to Contabo GmbH. So this is how we started to hunt and finally build a profile of this specific threat actor. So these are all the staging domains where we have seen through our hunting since 2023 to Jan of 2025, where multiple domains were registered with the same ASN, and keeping tabs on the specific ASN, we were able to identify these new payloads and what are the new TTPs. So finally, coming to the newer timeline, specifically to 2024, we saw that it has, since 24 itself, it has started to target and use lures related to US versus China trade war with same decoys and newer payloads like FetaRat. And in June, it has started to target the IAF officials with the first MSI-based stager that we saw to target the Maritime sector. And then in 2024 June, it has used honey trap themes, where WhatsApp-based images were circulated. It was made very popular in the news, where even officials got arrested for using these specific lures and sharing intelligence data with these agents. And then at the end of 24, we saw it continuing to target the Ministry of Defense with related lures, and then the new TTPs targeting the railway sector, oil and gas sector, and continuing to target the Ministry of External Affairs with payloads such as SparkRat and CurlBackRat. So these are some of the resources, and we have published that you can go and check in depth, in detail. So as we have seen, the threat landscape will keep evolving, and so must we. So these threat actors are adaptive, strategic, and persistent. And in order to keep ahead, we must not just monitor these specific groups, but track their emerging TTPs, their infrastructure. We have to share intelligence and collaborate as a community with specific response strategies. So thank you everyone for your time. Happy hunting.